I want to go back in time now to a guy who used to box for the Lynn Amateur Boxing Club in South London. Was a terrific competitor. He was really there. His name's Chris Okoh. He won the Commonwealth Cruiserweight title, had 16 bouts as a pro, won 14, lost his last two. In fact, he had a really hellacious fight out in, and that's the best way to describe it, in Belfast with Darren Corbett for the Cruiserweight title. That was an emotional rip-roar of a night. Adam Booth was in his corner on that particular, and I think David Hay was out there as a passenger. Mick Carney was out there sort of as an advisor. We're just out there. Anyway, Chris got overpowered a bit by Corbett, who was a handful, but he was a tidy, handy little fighter in his own way, Chris. Anyway, he walked away in 1999. I heard all sorts of things. Anyway, I've seen his face appearing recently. I know he's back working with a heavyweight called Whyte, who we had in the studio here recently. Anyway, I managed to speak to Chris a bit earlier. He's up in Liverpool because Dillian fights there on Saturday. And the first thing I asked him was, had he actually ever been away from boxing since his last fight in 1999?
Oh, wow. You're showing my age there, Steve.
I had to do that because I'm older than you.
And you look older as well.
Easy, there's no need for that.
I've been very much involved in it, but I took a bit of a break. And then I qualified as a probation officer in 2002.
That's what I heard.
And I was doing that. And then I got back into boxing in 2004 as a coach into the amateurs side of things. I was actually head coach and matchmaker at Chadwell St Mary's Boxing Club in Essex. I moved over to Essex in 2004. And I was head coach until very recently. I was head coach of Chadwell St Mary's Boxing Club, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Really, really loved it.
So, are you still working as a probation officer now, Chris, or have you moved full time to the pro game now?
Yeah, I've moved over. Pretty much, like I say, I've moved over to the pro game, and I'm doing sort of like hostel work for the YMCA. Just to supplement my income, really, and that keeps me afloat.
What is that? You sort of do shifts?
It's work with the YMCA. It's an organisation which people are, I'm sure, aware of. They dealing specifically with the young homeless people, and I work in various centres for the past 2.5, 3 years. I've been working in centres in and around South London, Brixton, Stockwell, Croydon as well. Yeah.
Just briefly, before we finish with that part of it, is it better out there or worse now than it was 3 years ago, Chris?
What do you mean in terms of?
In terms of the homeless situation, desperate situation.
It's not brilliant. Like I say, the YMCA do a lot for young homeless people. You know, providing various resources and that. And again, being on probation as working for a probation service. You see a lot of offenders coming in with homelessness issues, amongst other things, you know. So it's not easy, but it's about providing the resources to get these young people off the streets and into safe accommodation, and that usually can reduce a lot of the problems, you know.
Chris, so when you said that was a couple of years ago, when did you start, or when did you first meet Dillian Whyte, the heavyweight you'll be working with on Saturday night at Olympia? I had Dillian in the studio here. When did he first come into your orbit?
Well, I was working at the Real Fight Club about 2.5 years ago, where Spencer Fearon used to work, and I was doing some personal training down there. And a very, very old friend of mine, Leroy Harris.
I remember Leroy Harris. He used to have his little son.
His little son, Junior. I used to box.
Yeah, all the time. Leroy never changed. He was the same age dad for about 20 years.
That's right, forever young. He must be.
He was forever young.
The fountain of youth. Yeah. But I met Dillian directly through Leroy.
Okay.
He literally just popped up. I hadn't seen Leroy for years and years, and he just came into the Real Fight Club, and I was working there. I remember it really, really clearly, and he actually said to me, "Chris, I've got a young heavyweight who I think could be really good." And he sort of said, I sort of took on board what he said, and I thought, well, he maybe elaborate a little bit. And then the following Thursday, he brought him down. I took Dillian on the pad for about half an hour, and I was pretty much hooked then. I saw his potential pretty much straight away, really, you know. But that's when I started working with Dylan about 2.5 years ago.
Is he as eager to learn as he comes across? I mean, I've met him a couple of times now, half a dozen times, and I've had him in the studio here, and it strikes me that this kid just wants to learn. He wants to train 29 hours a day, 8 days a week.
Yeah, and pretty much he is. Yes, Steve, he is. In answer to your question, he's just so eager, and that's the joy of working with him. You know, he just wants to learn. He has a thirst to learn. I think he wants to fight.
Yeah, he does want to fight, doesn't he?
He wants to have a fight, but on top of that, he wants to learn. His attitude towards training is brilliant. It's second to none, and it makes obviously my job that much as a coach. It makes my job that much easier. You know yourself. You've seen so many over the years. We see so many talented boxers, and I have. You know, I've seen so many talented boxers, and they're for whatever reason they don't have the aptitude to learn, or they're lazy, or they don't want to commit as much as they want to. But with Dillian, you know, there's ability there, but the main thing is he wants to learn, and that sort of speeds up his improvement. You know,
and especially with heavyweights, because heavyweights, even though they're the biggest ones, they're the easiest ones to influence and have their heads turned, aren't they?
Yeah. You know, and like I say, he's a good listener, and like I say, he's to use a cliche, he is like a sponge. Like I say, he absorbs what you impart to him, and hopefully my experience and the knowledge I have, hopefully he can impart that to his benefit, really.
Chris Okoh there talking to me earlier. It'll be fantastic to actually do a piece of him one night in one of those YMCAs, maybe the one in Brixton or in Stockwell, sort of speak to him when he's there. And also maybe because he's a good talker, get close to him before a Dillian Whyte fight, maybe get in the studio beforehand, that type of stuff. I think that would work really, really well. Anyway,